Okay, guys, we're gonna try something a little new tonight. Um, we're live from my office, my home office, and I'm going to be reading Project 2025 tonight. Normally, I read this during. Turn down just a little bit. Sorry. So normally, I read this during the day. Like Mondays and Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I read Project 2025. I didn't have the opportunity today, so I'm going to try to do it tonight. We're going to see if this works out any better and see how it goes. So if you are new here, welcome. I read Project 2025 out loud. I'm actually reading it on my computer tonight. Normally I have my folder, but because my computer's right here, I'm just going to read it simply right here. We are on page 283. We are in talking about the general welfare. Now, I did read this yesterday, section 3, but section 3 talking about the general welfare is a very broad, very big topic. And there's a lot of information in just a couple of pages. Now, this whole document is 920 pages. It is very long, and a lot of it reads like stereo instructions. But there are little tiny pieces of this that are very crucial to what they say Donnie is not part of. He is. I don't care what anybody says. He absolutely is. So, just want to make that clear. If you're joining us for the first time, reading Project 2025, if you're joining us again, welcome back. I'm going to start and I'm going to read those few important pages. It starts on 283. And it goes through 287. But there is a, thank you for the heart, Grammy. I appreciate you. There is a lot of information that is covered in just those couple of pages. Section 3, 283 through 287. It's like half a page. But there are so many things that they are outlining for almost like the next 400 pages that you're like, okay, I want to know what's going on here. So I'm going to read Section 3, the general welfare. When our founders wrote in the Constitution that the federal government would promote general welfare, they could not have fathomed a massive bureaucracy that would someday spend $3 trillion in a single year, roughly the sum combined spent by the departments covered in this section in 2022. Approximately half of all that colossal sum was spent by the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, alone. The belly of the massive behemoth that is the modern administrative state. HHS is home to Medicare and Medicaid, the principal drivers of our $31 trillion of national debt. It is and it's not. So, when Congress passed and President Lyndon B. Johnson signed these laws into programs, they were set on autopilot with no plan on how to pay for them. That's not true either. The first year that Medicare spending was visible on the books was 1967. From that point on through 2020, according to the American Main Street Initiative's analysis of official federal tallies, again, right-wing organization, Medicaid and Medicare combined cost $17.8 trillion, while our combined federal deficit over that same span was $17.9 trillion. What they're saying is, in essence, our deficit problem is a Medicare and Medicaid problem, and it's not. And here's why. So, every time you guys get paychecks, right? Every time you have a paycheck, you pay into Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Medicare is funded by the Social Security Administration, which means it's funded by taxpayers. We all pay 1.45% of our earnings into FICA, Federal Insurance Contributions Act, which goes toward Medicare. Employers pay another 1.45%, bringing the total to 2.9%. So when they're saying, oh, it's Medicare and Medicaid that are the drivers of this huge deficit, we pay into it. We pay into it. It's why they call it an entitlement, because you've earned it. So the reason why I think these 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, like 4.5, 5 pages is so important is because it talks about what they want to do away with within within just the Health and Human Services alone. So, HHS is home to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and the National Institute of Health, the NIH. Oh, thank you for the heart, Grammy. I appreciate you. Again, guys, if I see your gifts and I don't recognize them, I apologize. I am just reading. I am kind of seeing them out of the corner of my eye, and I appreciate them. They are never expected. I am all about knowledge is power. So like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, all the shameless plug shit that you want to do. I just wanted to see how a nighttime read would be different from a beginning read. I'm like daytime read. So, and again, I'm in my office, so I'm not reading from my actual books, and I do have them. I'm actually reading it online because it just happens to be right here. So, back to that. It says the duo most responsible, the NIH and the CDC, along with President Joe Biden, for the irrational, destructive, and un-American mask and vaccine mandates that were imposed upon us, ostensibly free people during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday. The reason that that is such a bullshit statement is because the entire globe was in a pandemic. The globe wore masks. Everybody around the world has social distance. Everybody in the world got vaccinated. It wasn't just the United States. So them acting like this is just Joe Biden being irresponsible with money is it's a lie. It's an absolute, it's a lie. And they know it. And people will say, well, look how many more people died under COVID under Joe Biden. Because Joe Biden was playing catch up. So, that's what that is. By the way, if you missed tonight's reading live, I do upload them to my YouTube. So, I'm going to upload the first one and then upload the second one. So, you're going to see a daytime and a nighttime with the same kind of information. Because I just wanted to go through these 5 pages to really get the bulk of what the next 400 pages are. Because the first part of it is all about cabinet and White House and council and all of that shit and everything, how they want to stack it and Schedule F and get yes men in and fire civil servants. That's what the whole first 2 sections were about. These next 400 pages are things that are going to affect you and I directly. There are things they want to cut, things they want to get rid of, things they want to eliminate, things they want to squash, things they want no funding for. And you'll see it. I've read ahead again on some of these things, and a lot of these things I'm reading for the first time. These pages I've read for like 3 or 4 times now because I read it before, but I wanted to read it again at night because, again, 283 through 287 in Project 2025 is a very big reason why this is concerning. Concerning. It's a very Elon word. So, all along, it was clear from randomized controlled trials that the gold standard of medical research, the masks that provide little to no benefit in preventing the spread of the virus and might even be counterproductive. Yet, the CDC ignored these highly qualified RCT cherry-picked from politically malleable observational studies and declared that everyone except children and infants below the age of 2 should don masks. Yes, and again, this is the world. This wasn't just the United States. This is the world. We were the number 1 in deaths and we were the number 1 in cases. And that never should have been the case ever. Had responsible parties been in place, not Trump, this would have been squashed so much faster and none of this goobly gobble would be anything we're talking about. But I digress. Because what they're going to do within this next 5 pages, you're going to see how they're going to link every health and human service to climate change, LGBTQ, gender studies, abortion rights. They think all of that is essentially from this. It's absolutely mind-boggling that people aren't like, are you serious? This is what's in this? Yes, this is exactly what is in this. This is their playbook. They've had 40 years to hone in on this. From 3,000 pages on down to 920, they've had 10 different revisions. And everyone's saying, Trump says he's disavowed it. He doesn't talk about it, blah, 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 blah. No, he said it. His name is mentioned over 300 times. 18 of the 36 authors of Project 2025 worked for him, for his cabinet. They know him. They've worked with him extensively. So that in itself is always a lie. So people will always come into my live and be like, Trump 2024, he never said that. He said he's against it. It's a damn lie. Everything they're doing is to set up so that when people who actually know what they're doing, and they're conservatives, unfortunately, are going to be able to manipulate him and say, this is the person you need because so and so. And he'll be like, oh, okay. And he'll just try to stroke his ego. Why do you think this says Project 2025? Because what other candidate besides Kamala do you see becoming the next president? I don't see Bobby becoming president. I mean, he already, court cases today were like, tough shit, you're staying on the ballot. So he fucked himself entirely. But this document is meant for 2025, and the only president that would be conservative that would be considered is Trump. So this is Trump. It is Trump. Project 2025 is Trump. I don't give a damn what you say. This is fact. This is reading. This is actually what they're saying, and you'll see how it goes on. It'll be the next conservative president should reestablish the Trump administration, ... The next conservative needs to ... what Trump started. Everything comes back to Trump. Trump is their yes dog. That's what it is. So while he may think he's running it, he's not running it. Oh, thank you for the tiny Grammy. I appreciate you. That's not what it is. So anytime somebody says he's already said this is nothing to do, he's nothing to do with it. He has everything to do with it. And I can give you pages and pages of examples of exactly what they're going to do if they reinstalled him. P.S. They're not going to. But this is why. This is why this is very concerning. So let's get back to reading. I digress. Let me see. We talked about the observance. Okay, so under COVID, as former director of HHS Office of Civil Rights, Roger Severino writes in Chapter 14, the CDC exposed itself as perhaps the most incompetent and arrogant agency in the federal government. Nor is the CDC the only villain in this play. Severino writes of the National Institute of Health, despite its popular image as a benign science agency, NIH was responsible for paying for research in aborted baby parts, mixed animal-human chimera experiment. Are you serious? You're trying to tell me that there were human-animal chimera experiments in which the genes of humans and animals are mixed and gain-of-function viral research may have been responsible for COVID-19. The entire document keeps going to back to China, back to China, back to China. But now we're saying it's the National Health Institute. We're saying they were having chimera experiments with aborted fetuses. Exactly. Make it make sense. Severino writes that Anthony Fauci's division of NIH, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, owns half the patent for the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine, and several NIH employees receive up to $150,000 annually from Moderna vaccine sales. That will be the same experimental mRNA vaccine that the CDC now wants to force on children who are at little to no risk from COVID-19 but are at great risk from public health officials. This is so dangerous, and it's misinformation. It's absolutely mind-boggling that they would even say that. They know what they're saying. They know the fear that they're trying to stoke. mRNA was not brand new. That's not how that works. You work through trials, and yes, everyone's like, oh, vaccine created super fast right away. Because they had been working on similar vaccines, on similar components. So they already had like step 1, 2, 3, 4. They kind of had a lot of those in play because these are doctors and scientists and what they do. So when this came out, they said, hey, let's make sure that we're checking with this. And boom, it actually worked with it. It did exactly what the trial said they would do. That's why they were able to fast track it, as people want to say that it was just made up because they were trying to make people sick, and it wasn't the case. There's been years and years and years and years of research on mRNA vaccines. Years. And COVID-19 just happened to be when this could actually come to fruition. So, the incestuous relationship between the NIH, CDC, and vaccine makers, with all the conflict of interest it entails, cannot be allowed to continue, and the revolving door between them must be locked. As Severino writes, funding for scientific research should not be controlled by a small group of highly paid and unaccountable insiders at the NIH, many of whom stay in power for decades. The NIH monopoly on directing research should be broken. What's more, NIH has long been the forefront of pushing in junk gender science. Right there. See what it is? They took the COVID vaccine, And they said, oh, gender bending. Oh, human chimera. Oh, aborted fetuses. So they're mad at the vaccines because they're thinking all of these things are happening, or they're going to tell you all these things are happening when there's absolutely no fact based with it. Because it scares you. You're like, oh, okay, what's happening? What are we? Exactly. It's meant as fear. It's meant to keep controlled. Funding. What's more? So here we talk about, here's what they want to do for the next thing. The next HHS secretary should immediately put an end to the department's foray into woke transgender activism. They are tying the COVID-19 vaccine and masks to transgenderism. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. Talk about saving lives around the world when a global pandemic happened and you're like, oh, they're just trying to push their transgender activism. What? Yeah, exactly. If you blinked twice like I did, exactly. HHS also pushes abortion as a form of health care. It is. I'm going to say this for the millionth time. Abortion is health care. It is health care between a doctor and a woman, a person with a uterus, who has a fetus. That is what an abortion is. So whether it is absolutely needed, absolutely dire, or simply wanted is none of your business. It is a form of healthcare because a healthcare professional is the one. Thank you for the vote, Gabby. I appreciate you. Is a healthcare professional and you who make that decision and no one else. So yes, it is healthcare because you're taking care of the health of the individual who happens to be pregnant. Thank you for the rose tray. I appreciate you. Skirting into sometimes blatantly defying the Hyde Amendment in the process. Severino writes that the FDA should revise its approval of chemical abortion drugs because the politicized approval process was illegal from the start. Thank you for the rose, Kat. I appreciate you. Again, guys, I apologize if I'm not seeing gifts. I am always appreciative of them. I'm just happen to be reading. So if I don't recognize you, I apologize. I do see it and I thank you greatly. Where was I? And this is where my ADHD comes in, like, okay, where was I again? FDA should reverse. Okay. In addition, HHS programs. Oh, wait, now I'm being flagged. Oh, here we go. This is typical. So we'll take a minute to calm down. Somebody just reported my live as misinformation. I am reading Project 2025. I'm reading Project 2025. So please explain to me where the misinformation is. If I am reading what a conservative handbook is telling me, who has the misinformation? Who is angry that I am reading this? Are you angry because this is what conservatives are putting out? Are you angry because this is what their fact is? Please explain to me. You don't have to be chicken shit about it. You can say it to my face. I'm an adult. You can read it right there. You can tell me that you were the one that reported me. Totally fine. It's not misinformation. This is their information. This is coming from their playbook. What they're saying are HHS, our health HHS programs, what they violate. That I have had this many times. Anytime that somebody does that, let me explain to you, if I get banned, I've been banned many times. Bananaed, not a big deal. I always come back, I always do. What I'm telling you with this is what I am reading from. These aren't my words. These aren't words I would ever say. These are words that they are telling you what they are installing into their next conservative administration. So, let's keep it going, shall we? We'll turn down the notch a little bit. So we'll just keep reading so that we don't give misinformation. We'll just keep reading. So, where was I before I got some violation I had to appeal that I already appealed? Cool. HHS programs often violate spirit and sometimes the letter of protection laws. Severino writes, and we're on page 284. If you think I have misinformation, follow along. It's free on Google. I printed it out because I like to have the written word. Follow along. Follow along and tell me where the misinformation is because I'm reading it. I'm reading directly from it. Page 284. We are 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down. So, can we get back to reading? Can we get back to reading? Again, guys, if you're just joining, I am reading Project 2025 live. If you're here for the first time, welcome. If you're here again, welcome back. I've already been flagged for misinformation, but I don't know where the misinformation came from because I'm reading it directly from their playbook. So please do it for me where in the comments that I have had the misinformation. I'm reading their playbook and why it's dangerous. Secretaries should pursue a robust agenda, we talked about that, to protect the fundamental right to life, protect conscience, science, and uphold body integrity rooted in biological realities, not ideology. Just because somebody says there is only a man and there is only a woman, that doesn't mean it's fact. It means you've never taken the genetics course. You've never talked to a geneticist. You've never seen somebody who's intersex. You've never seen somebody who has both male and female parts and anatomy and hormones. And they're very far and few in between. And the fact that people get so riled up about a fucking small fraction of our community, it never ceases to amaze me. It's just like saying, you know what, everybody only has blue eyes. Everybody only has blue eyes. And somebody says, well, I have green eyes. You're like, no, there is only one eye color, blue. And somebody says, well, I have brown eyes. No, there's only one eye color, it's blue. And you're like, my eyes are green. Her eyes are brown. So because I don't live your reality, somehow that makes my medical condition or identity or sex or gender wrong because you don't accept it because of what? Christian nationalism? Like, make that make sense. So you're telling me because of your religion, I am not who I am because your book tells you so. Okay. Cool. Oh yeah, that would be my husband, by the way. For everybody who says I'm just a lonely cat lady, that's my husband over there, laying on our bed. I'm in my home office. So, hi, honey. Can you say hi?
I can say hi.
See? You can say hi. So, squash that. The next secretary should also reverse the Biden administration focus on LGBTQ equity, subsidizing single motherhood, decentivizing work, and penalizing marriage. That is what they said they were going to do. Should reverse, not look into, not talk about, reverse. They want to reverse the focus on LGBTQ equity, subsidizing single motherhood, decentivizing work, and penalizing marriage, replacing such policies with those encouraging marriage, work, motherhood, fatherhood, and nuclear families. Nuclear families in this document means one mother, one father, and as many babies as they want. That's it. It doesn't recognize people who never want to have children. It doesn't recognize people who cannot have children. It doesn't recognize blended families. It doesn't recognize single mothers. It says, pop out as many kids as you can, and trust us, we'll take care of you, when we know the answer is an absolute lie, because you've just literally said subsidizing single motherhood. You act like sometimes single motherhood is a choice. For a lot of people, it's not. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it never worked out. Sometimes it was an oops. So sometimes single motherhood, and sometimes it's very much planned. Very much planned. But they want to penalize it and get rid of it. So they, again, let's read it again. 284. The next secretary should also reverse the Biden administration's focus on LGBTQ equity, subsidizing single motherhood, decentivizing work, and penalizing marriage, and replace such policies with those encouraging marriage, work, motherhood, fatherhood, and nuclear families. Nuclear families meaning mother, father, Christian, and babies. If there is another department that has gone off the rails like HHS during the Obama and Biden administration, it is the once proud Department of Justice. That's why I said these 5 pages are a fucking doozy, because it talks about all these different departments and what they want to get rid of in a 5-page span. 920 documents to bore the hell out of you. 920 pages is just like this. And then these 5 are like, what? Tell me more. Tell me more. As a former counselor to the Attorney General, Gene Hamilton writes in Chapter 17, the department has a long and noble history. Edmund Randolph, the first Attorney General, took office the same year as President Washington. Yet its long-standing reputation has been marred by the Biden administration's abuse of the department powers for its own ends. Hamilton writes the department's unprecedented politicalization and weaponization under the Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland, resulting in politically motivated and viewpoint-based prosecutions of political enemies and indifference to the crimes of political allies, has made the department a threat to the republic. You are going to notice run-on sentences for days. They try to get as much information as they can in this little tiny bit, and sometimes my eyes get like buggy, like make it period, next sentence, period. So they just want to ramble it all in as much as they can. The most important thing for the next Attorney General to do is to refocus the department on its core function of protecting public safety and defending the rule of law while restoring its values of independence, impartiality, honesty, integrity, respect, and excellence. And you want to do that with Donald Trump. Tell me one thing value of independence, impartiality, honesty, integrity, respect, and excellence have any of those have ever described Donald Trump? Ever. No. This is especially true of the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, a bloated, arrogant, increasingly lawless organization, especially at the top. If you are following along, we are on page 285, the second paragraph. The FBI views itself as an independent agency that is on par with the Attorney General, rather than an agency that is under the AG and fully accountable to him or her. To rein in this completely out of control bureau and remind it of its place within, rather than at the top of the DOJ hierarchy, Hamilton writes that the FBI's separate office of General Counsel, with approximately 300 attorneys, separate office of Legislative Affairs, and separate office of Public Affairs should be abolished. All of them gone. All of them gone. What? This is the beginning. This is the beginning of what they want to get rid of. So we're talking 300 attorneys right off the bat. You're like, okay, buy 300 attorneys for the DOJ and the FBI. Cool. Requiring the FBI to get its legal advice from the wider department would serve as a crucial check on an agency that has recently pushed past legal boundary after legal boundary. Indeed, Hamilton writes, the next conservative administration should eliminate any offices within the FBI that it has the power to eliminate without any action from Congress. This is how they're trying to supersede shit going through regular channels, checks and balances, 3 branches of government. This is how they want to supersede it. Like, if you can get rid of it, get rid of it. Got it, girl? Got it. Exactly. Elsewhere, the DOJ should target violent and career criminals, not parents. Work to dismantle criminal organization, partially by rigorously prosecuting interstate drug activity, and restart the Trump administration's China initiative to address Chinese espionage and theft of trade secrets. Check a Mar-a-Lago bathroom, which the Biden administration terminated largely out of a concern for poor optics. Facts. It should also enforce existing federal law that prohibits mailing abbreviations rather than harassing pro-life demonstrators. So They don't want you having like any plan B or any, if the press don't, nope. Respect the constitutional guarantee of freedom of speech rather than trying to police speech on the internet, and enforce federal immigration laws rather than pretending there is no border. That is so much to take in one time. So you don't want people having access to any kind of health care when it relates to some abortions. You say you want to guarantee freedom of speech rather than trying to police it, but yet literally people try to police you all the time and enforce federal immigration laws. We've had bills. We've had bipartisan bills. And who has been told to kill those bills? Mike Johnson, by whom? Trump. Thank you. Thank you. Louder in the back. In contrast, it keeps going. Okay, so we're talking about dismantling this, restarting the Trump-China initiative. What's next? In contrast to the DOJ's long history, the Department of Education, discussed by Lindsey Burke in Chapter 11, is a creation of the Jimmy Carter administration. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. President Carter, we love you. We will always love you. And this is a very big reason. The Department of Education. The department is a convenient one-stop shop for woke educational cartel, which, as the COVID era showed, is not particularly concerned with children's education. The Department of Education is not concerned with children's education. No, I don't think that's how that works. But okay, let's keep going, shall we? Schools should be responsive to parents rather than to leftist advocates intent on indoctrination. And the more the federal government is involved in education, the less responsive to parents the public schools will be. Do you hear what they're saying? Like, when I was growing up, if you got in trouble at school and a teacher had to call home, your ass was grass. Like, but now they're saying, no, you can't teach my child that. No, you can't teach my child that. They want to take education out of education. They want Christian education in schools, not reality. They don't want fact-based history. They don't want to talk about civil rights. They don't want to talk about systemic racism. They don't want to talk about DEI. They don't want to talk about health education. They don't want to talk about everything that makes us different. They don't want to talk about inclusion. They want you to put in this little tiny, teeny, tiny box and be told what to do. They want to ban all the books. They want to flood all of the school boards with people who want vouchers and are for people like Betsy DeVos, who was our Department of Education, who is a fucking nightmare because she wants nothing but vouchers. So when you have vouchers and you take those away from public education, those in poor communities don't get that money back. But the kids who are already enrolled in those schools sure as fuck do get that money. And then they raise tuition. But they don't have to accept any more students because there's also a limit there. So they're talking about control. Control. Every time they talk about taking something federal down to a state level, that is about control. We talked about this. So, okay, there's a federal law on a national abortion ban. Cool, right? No, give it back to the states. Okay, you get it back to the states. What about the states saying, you know what, we're gonna drill down further. Let's go from states' rights down to county rights. So let's say you happen to be in, I don't know, Maricopa County. But if I go to Pinal County, like, something's legal, but it's not legal in Maricopa. Okay, now we're going to drill down on cities. Okay, so let's talk about Phoenix. You can do something in Phoenix, but you can't do something in Mesa. Okay, well then let's drill down even further. You can't do something on this street, but you can do something on this street. The further they drill down with government, the smaller they make it, the less they are held accountable for making sure that everybody is taken care of. That is why there are things like federal disaster relief, not city disaster relief. Because of things like this. Because the more that you drill down, it's about control. Right here. It's literally saying it. Page 285 at the bottom if you're following along. The more the federal government, the department, for an example, is a federal intrusion into a traditionally state and local realm. For the sake of American children, Congress should shutter it and return control of education to the states. To the states. That is a very big word for to the states. DEI hires. Woke. It's one or two words off of something they really want to say. You know what I mean? I don't want to get bananered, but we're talking about exactly drilling it down to the states. Short of this, the Secretary of Education should insist that the department serve parents and American ideals, not advocates whose message is that children can choose their own sex, that America is systemically racist, math itself is racist, and Martin Luther King is the ideal of colorblind society should be rejected in favor of reinstating color-conscious society. Wow. That was one sentence. Read it again. Short of this, the Secretary of Education should insist that the department serve parents and American ideals, not advocates, whose message is that children can choose their own sex, that America is systemically racist, that math itself is racist, and that Martin Luther King Jr.'s ideal of colorblind society should be rejected in favor of reinstituting a color-conscious society. That is one sentence. The next head of this department will have a lot to do, hopefully culminating in the department's closure of the salutatory restoration of educational controls to states, localities, and parents. Smaller, 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 smaller. Control. Keep them dumb, keep them poor. Keep them uneducated. Keep them divisive. This is a playbook for authoritarianism and dictatorship. That's it. There's no other way around it. The next Secretary of Energy, so we're going on to the next paragraph, will similarly have much work to do. Under the next president, the Department of Energy should end the Biden administration's unprovoked war on fossil fuels, restore America's energy independence, oppose eyesore windmills built at a taxpayer expense, and respect the right of Americans to buy and drive cars of their own choosing rather than trying to force them into buying electric vehicles and eventually out of the driver's seat altogether in favor of self-driving robots. One fucking sentence. It is one sentence. And a person they give huge tax credits and breaks to is Elon. And what does Elon make? Electric cars. They're trying to get saying unprovoked war on fossil fuels because oil is big ass money. Big money. Big money. It's all about money. It's all about the greed. This has nothing to do with them saying, oh, climate change isn't real. No, climate change they know is real, but they know how much money big oil makes. Why do you think he keeps saying drill, baby, drill? It's what he does. It's exactly what he does. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate you. But that's what he's talking about. This is what they're referring to. No one is saying that you have to drive electric vehicles right now. They're trying to make a switch so we don't kill the earth. Okay? Just so you're aware, Earth about 4.5 billion years old. Humans about 300,000 years old. We're not the first era. We won't be the last era. But if we kill Mother Earth, we certainly the fuck will be. Okay? You see where this is the problem? So maybe not running so much on dinosaur bones to get around and cause pollution, and maybe something to clean it up and have renewable energies, and then teach a whole new generation a whole new trade is probably not such a bad thing. But in old money, in old oil, in lots of greed, in lots of corporate, no, there's no bottom. There's no there's never a number that you'll hear a CEO say, if I make $1.39 billion, I'm done. The rest can go. I can't spend this in a lifetime, blah, blah, blah. No, more. And that gap between the 1% and those of us who are the middle class who keep getting skirted is the problem. It's greed. It's all greed. It's greed. There's no reason that half this packaging needed to change. There's no reason those prices needed to change. And people want to be so quick to jump on Joe Biden for it. When he was held, here you go, here's a fucking disaster, have fun. He's like, oh, this is great. And greed, it's greedflation. It's people missed out on money during a pandemic, and when they regrouped and got together and said, you know what, we can give the same or we can give less and we can charge more and we're going to do it and we're going to get bigger tax breaks and we're going to have more money for our stockholders and our shareholders. And that's what's going to happen. And they did it. That's why we're paying what we pay. This has nothing to do with anything but greed. And this is exactly what they're talking about. One of the big ones is fossil fuels, because they want to drill the shit out of Alaska and the Arctic Circle. They've talked about it. I talked about this previously. They want you, in this document, they're like, nope, open up all the parks. Make them all this. Drill as much as you want. Drill. We need those fossil fuels. We don't. Technology and humanity can improve, and we can be a little kinder to, the entire earth. It's not just the United States is affecting. Climate change is earth. It's not Climate USA. No. It's the earth. So, and not only that, self-driving robots, y'all never seen a fucking Waymo? You ever had an Uber? You have another driver? It's not always a bad thing. As former commissioner of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commissioner, Bernard L. McNamee says in Chapter 12, a conservative president must be committed to unleashing all of America's energy resources and making the energy economy serve the American people, not special interests. It's the only thing it serves. Why do you think oil lobbyists exist? Do you know how much money Chevron makes? A fuck ton more than I could ever count. In Chapter 10, Darren Bast writes that the Biden administration, Department of Agriculture, claims to be transforming the food system as we know it. But the government does not need to transform the food system. Instead, it should respect American farmers, truckers, and families. In Chapter 13, the former chief of staff at the EPA, Mandy Gunasakara, writes that the EPA's current activities and staffing levels far exceed its congressional mandates and purposes, where its initial success in its infancy in the 70s was a product of clear mandates, a streamlined structure, and recognizing the state's prominent role. Again, one paragraph. It's just, you're like, having since become a coercive agency, fully embedded activities and its structure and mission should be greatly circumscribed. So they're wanting to revamp and shut down part of the EPA. They want to say, it's got to go back to the farmers. And when they get into this, the next one we talk about is agriculture. So Department of Agriculture is the very next chapter after this brief overview of general welfare. And you'll see how that plays out as well. When they talk about farmers, you'll see. It's mind-boggling. Former Secretary of Department of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Benjamin S. Garson, writes in Chapter 15 that HUD is beset with a mission creep and regularly crosses the line into exercising quasi-legislative powers. In the next administration, it should refocus on its core duties and keep non-citizens from living in federally assisted housing, provide enhanced oversight of foreign ownership of U.S. real estate, and reinvigorate paths upward of economic mobility and economic self-sufficiency. In Chapter 18, the former acting assistant secretary on the policy of Department of Labor, Jonathan Berry, writes the department and related agencies should pursue pro-family, pro-worker policies to help restore the family-supporting job as a centerpiece of American economy in lieu of the current administration's left-wing social engineering agenda, the most assertive in history, which empowers race, gender, climate change activities all at the expense of American workers. Again, one fucking sentence. So far we want to dismantle pretty much everything we talked about. Department of Housing and Urban Development and Department of Agriculture. You're talking about Department of Labor. You're talking about the EPA. You're talking about the Department of Education. You're talking about the FBI. You're talking about the DOJ. These are all things they want to do day damn one. Do you think that they're not at the ready for this? This is why this cannot continue. This is why we have to expose everything they're talking about. Because this is not something Kamala would ever agree to. And the only other person up for the job is whom? Trump. Thank you for the rose, Dobbin. I appreciate you. This is why when they tell you it's nothing to do with him. This is exactly to do with him. In Chapter 19, this is the last page of this. Chapter 19, the Department of Transportation, DOT, right? The former DOT Deputy Assistant for the Research and Technology, Diana Fergat-Roth, I butchered that last name, in pursuit of an anti-fossil fuel climate agenda never approved by Congress, the Biden administration has raised fuel economy requirements to levels that cannot be realistically met by most gas-powered cars, thereby reducing America's freedom while increasing costs. Okay, so quick question. Who sold our oil reserves off? Was it Joe or was it Donnie? Yeah, Donnie didn't have to sell the reserves off. He did that. So, freedom from what? You can buy an electric car. You can still pump gas. Lastly, former acting chief of Department of Veterans Affairs, Brooks D. Tucker, echoing concerns expressed in the chapter's writes in Chapter 20 that the Veterans Affairs VA must be accountable to the needs of the problems of veterans, not subservient to the parochial differences of the bureaucracy. Holy hell. That is the most, I would say, of everything I've read so far up and through this 283 through 287 is the bulk of what they want to dismantle. And over the next 400 pages, they're going to tell you exactly what they're going to do and what the next administration should do, what we should be doing. So, when I started that is Chapter 10, the Department of Agriculture, Darren Basked. And I will read, let me see how many pages this actually is. Oh, thank you, Apple User. I appreciate the gift. So the Department of Agriculture is how many pages? I'm just trying to read through just to see, scroll through. It's quite lengthy on what they want to do. And they keep saying American farmers, but they refuse to put climate information into those studies. Like, we're fine. Just make all the food you want. Grow all the food you want. No. You have to make sure it's environmentally sound and that it can actually fucking grow. I mean, it talks about like dietary needs. So this one is 310. So it starts at page 310. It's 310. I'm just trying to... So 289 through 310. I don't think I can get through all of it tonight, but let's see what we can get through, okay? American Department of Agriculture. American farmers efficiently and safely produce food to meet the needs of individuals around the globe. Because of the innovation and resilience of the nation's farmers, American agriculture is a model for the world. If farmers are allowed to operate without unnecessary government intervention, American agriculture will continue to flourish, producing plentiful, safe, nutritious, and affordable food. GMOs. There are foods that you cannot get in the UK because they refuse to put GMOs in certain foods and certain colorings, but we allow it here because it's nutrition and safe, right? The U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, can and should play a limited role with most of its focus on removing governmental barriers that hinder food production or otherwise undermine efforts to meet the consumer demand. That is lie number 7,326, I think, at this point. Because if we had so much food, there wouldn't be hungry people. Do you see how that makes sense? So you're like, you shouldn't hinder food production. The government shouldn't hinder food production. No, they shouldn't. But we always have a surplus. Always have a surplus. And people go hungry. So make that shit make sense. The USDA should recognize what should be self-evident. Agricultural production should be first and foremost be focused on efficiently producing safe food. Yes, it should. The chapter provides important background on the USDA and identifies many of the USDA specific issues that will be faced by an incoming administration. It provides specific recommendations for the next administration about how to address these issues and lays out a conservative vision for what the USDA should look like in the future. Here's the mission statement. The current mission statement, as stated by the Biden administration, highlights the broad scope of the USDA. To serve all Americans by providing effective, innovative, science-based publicly policy leadership in agriculture, food, nutrition, and natural resource protection and management, rural development, and related issues with commitment on delivering equitable and climate-smart opportunities that inspire and help Americans thrive. Why is that a bad thing? Please explain to me what in that mission statement is bad. And they're going to break it down and tell you, so don't worry. This is what they say. This is why this is bad. The first part of the mission statement regarding the issues covered is not new to the Biden administration. It reflects the overly broad nature of the USDA's work. However, the language bringing it in equity and climate change is new to the Biden administration and part of the USDA's express effort to transform agricultural production. The USDA's new vision statement illuminates the focus of this effort: an equitable and climate-smart food and agriculture economy that protects and improves the health, nutrition, and quality of life of all Americans, yields healthy land, forests, and clean water, helps rural Americans thrive, and feeds the world. This effort is one on the federal central plan to put climate change and environmental issues ahead of the most important requirements of agriculture to efficiently produce safe food. Please explain to me, anyone, how that makes any kind of sense. You're telling me you're putting the cart before the horse, not the horse before the cart. You can't reap what you sow if you've sowed nothing. An equitable and climate-smart food and agriculture economy that protects and improves the health, nutrition, and quality of life of all Americans, yields healthy land, forests, and clean water, helps rural America thrive, and feeds the world. You cannot produce safe food if you first don't. Oh, thank you for the heart, Donald. I appreciate you. You can't. Sorry, I got totally sidetracked. Thank you for the. I thank you for the color. Thank you for the heart, Gordos. I appreciate you. How do you produce safe food if you don't protect the environment first? How? You want less regulation, meaning you want less oversight, meaning you want food to be less safe, and you just want it to be mass produced. Don't you want it to be safe? You're saying you want it to be safe, but you're saying it shouldn't. Being safe has nothing to do with being climate conscious? Have you taken a 7th grade general earth science class? Anyone? As an initial matter, the USDA should not try to control the shape of the economy, but it should instead remove obstacles that hinder food production. Further, it should not place ancillary issues such as environmental issues ahead of agriculture production itself. Absolutely wrong. 100% wrong. Environmental first, ahead of agriculture production second. If the environment is not safe in which to grow your crops will not grow, or they will be modified, or they will not have the same nutritional value as those that took those same precautions to make sure that the land was good for use, easy to till, easy to maintain. Do you see? No? So just genetically modify everything because it ramps up production and yet people are still hungry? It gets weirder. It gets weirder. A proper mission statement, even before the Biden administration's radical effort to reshape the USDA's work, the USDA's mission was and is too broad, including serving a major welfare agency through implementation of programs such as food stamps. Here we go. There are people who can't afford food, who do rely on the government, and they do try the best that they can, but people still fall short, and there are food stamps. Why, if you want everybody to have safe food, equitable food, but no mention of the environment, don't talk about that, and just want mass production, why should food stamps be any concern? Wouldn't you think you were helping out the farmers? Wouldn't you think you were helping out industries because you were feeding people who needed to be fed? Is it me? This far-reaching mission is not the fault of the USDA, but of Congress, which has given the department its extensive power. Congress must limit the USDA's role. A proper mission would clarify that the department's primary focus is on agriculture and that the USDA serves all Americans. The USDA's client is the American people in general and not a subset of interests such as farmers, meat packers, environmental groups, etc. I thought we wanted them to work with the farmers. Aren't the farmers the special interest? With its agricultural focus, the USDA should develop and decimate. Wait a minute. With this agricultural focus, the USDA should develop and disseminate information and research the historical role of the USDA to identify and address concrete threats to public health and safety arising directly from food and agriculture. Remove unjustified foreign trade barriers blocking market access for American agricultural goods, and generally remove government barriers that undermine access to safe and affordable food across the food supply chain. You don't mean that because people go hungry. It would be different if every single person was like, no, I'm full, I'm stuffed, give it to other countries. We have children that do not know where their next meal is coming from. Children that you want, children that are in this world, children that you love, and children that are here. And they cannot make their own living. And they go to bed hungry. And you're worried about us talking about environmental studies on agriculture, and you're pissed about food stamps and free school lunches? Make that make sense. Children will grow up to become adults, and those adults will not forget whence they came from, and will either try to dig their way out of their hole, or they're going to change the game. When people are hungry, they cannot think. It's that simple. You want children to go to school day in and day out, and I don't give a damn. Take more money out of my taxes if it means every damn kid gets to eat. Take more. Take a percentage. Take a dollar amount. Because you can't put a price on somebody who can't eat and they can't fend for themselves, and you are pissed about not having enough production, but then bitching about food stamps and free lunches. It doesn't make any sense. You're talking out of your ass. It is about money. It is about greed. Thank you, Nate Driver. I appreciate that. I digress. Again, I get heated because this is important. This shit is important. Let's see. Where was I? Proper mission statement. We got through that. Within the agricultural focus, the USDA, okay, we got through that. Where was I again? Food supply chain, okay. Core principles, bottom of page 290. Core principles should be included with any mission statement, including a recognition that farmers, the food system in general, should be free from unnecessary governmental intervention. Further, there should be clear statements from the importance of sound science to inform the USDA's work and respect for personal freedom and individual dietary choices, private property rights, and the rule of law. Taking these factors into account below is the model of the USDA mission. So this is what they're saying they want the new USDA mission to say. To develop and disseminate agriculture information and research, identify and address concrete public and safety threats directly connected to food and agriculture, and remove both unjustified foreign trade barriers for U.S. goods and domestic government barriers that undermine access to safe, affordable food absent a compelling need, all based on the importance of sound science, personal freedom, private property, rule of law, and to serve all Americans. That's a whole bunch of fucking word salad. I mean this much of it, and I mean this much of it. I don't mean any of this, but I got to put it in there. It's a lie. Overview. In 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed into law legislation that created the USDA. The department had a very narrow mission focused to disseminate the information connected to agriculture, to procure, propagate, and distribute among the people new valuable seeds and plants. During the last 160 years, the scope of the USDA's work. Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate you, Pancakes. Sorry, I got nice see on the side of my eyes, guys. I apologize if I'm not thanking you for gifts. I am just reading, but I see you and I appreciate you. Thank you. You are why I continue to do the work that I do, because I love being supported, that I can support you, that I can give you the information, the knowledge at hand. So back to it. Where does my ADHD brain head? Did I leave my place marker here? During the last 160 years, the scope of the USDA's work has expanded well beyond that narrow mission and well beyond agriculture itself. In addition to being a distributor of farm subsidies, the USDA runs the food stamp program and other food-related welfare programs and covers issues including conservation, biofuels, forestry, and rural programs. Based on the USDA's fiscal year 2023 budget summary, outlays are estimated at $261 billion. $221 billion for mandatory programs and $39 billion for discretionary. These outlays are broken down as follows. Nutrition assistance is at 70%. Farm, conservation, and commodity programs, 14%. All other, which include rural development, research, food safety, marketing, and regulatory and departmental management, 11%, and forestry, 5%. The USDA has provided a summary of its size, explaining today the USDA is comprised of 29 agencies. It is organized under 8 mission areas of the 16 staff offices with nearly 100,000 employees serving the American people and more than 6,000 locations across the country and abroad. Major priority issues and specific recommendations. Here's where their recommendations are. For the incoming administration, there are numerous issues that should be addressed at the USDA. This chapter identifies and discusses many of the most important issues. The initial issues discussed should be priority issues for the next administration. Number 1, defend American agriculture. It is deeply unfortunate that the first issue identified must be a willingness of the incoming administration to defend American agriculture, but this is precisely what the top priority for the administration should be. As previously discussed, the Biden administration is seeking to use the federal government to transform the American food system. The USDA website explains the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, alongside Biden-Harris administration leadership and the people of this great country, has embarked on another historic journey, transforming the food system as we know it from farm to fork at every stage along the supply chain. Why is this a bad thing? It's not a bad thing ever. The federal government does not need to transform the food system or develop a national plan to intervene across the supply chain. Yes, it does. Okay, fine. Then y'all who don't believe that can go right back to Lincoln times. Have fun doing anything 160 years ago, every day, all day. This is what it needs and why. It needs to develop. It needs to improve. It needs to evolve. And that's exactly what they're referring to. But conservatives don't want it to evolve. The national government does not need to transform the food system or develop a national plan to intervene across the supply chain. Instead, it should respect American farmers, truckers, and everyone who makes the food supply chain so resilient and successful. One of the most important lessons during the COVID-19 pandemic was how critical it was to remove barriers in the food supply chain, not increase them. What? How was that? No, we needed to increase them. The Biden administration's centrally planned transformational effort minimizes the importance of the efficient agricultural production and instead places issues such as climate change and equity front and center. Yes. Okay, I agree. Next. The USDA Strategic Plan Fiscal 2022 to 2026 identifies 6 strategic goals, the first 3 of which focus on issues such as climate change, renewable energy, and systemic racism. And again, yes, in the Secretary of Agriculture's message, there's only one mention of affordable food. Sorry guys, it says I have been on an hour, so I needed to do the verification to keep completing it. The USDA Strategic Plan Fiscal 2022-2026 identifies the 6 strategic goals. Okay. The first 3 of which focus on issues such as climate change, renewable energy, and systemic racism. In the Secretary of Agriculture's message, there's only one mention of affordable food and nothing about the efficient production and the incredible innovation and respect for the environment that already exists within the agriculture community. What? The Biden administration's USDA strongly supported the recent United Nations, the UN's Food System Summit. According to the USDA, the stated goal of the Food System Summit was to transform the way the world produces, consumes, and thinks about food within the context of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to meet the challenges of poverty, food security, malnutrition, population growth, climate change, and natural resource degradation. Exactly. The world, the globe, all of us, the circle, every continent, every country, all of them. Not just the US of motherfucking A. Sorry. The state, not unlike those who oppose reliable and affordable energy production, there's disdain, especially by some on the left, for American agriculture and the food system. No, there's not. The Biden administration's vision of a federal government developing a plan that fixes agriculture and focuses on issues secondary to food production is very disturbing. Disturbing because it creates equality for food? What? So conservatives just want you to have the kids, but they don't want you to damn feed the kids. You don't respect farmers because you buy up things and then you make them destroy crops. Okay. If you have too much production and you can't have a surplus, you got to destroy that crop, sir. And we own that. We own that seed. Go ahead, take a look at any single like chicken farmer. Oh, thank you for the confetti. I appreciate you, Native Driver. I appreciate you. Look at any farmer. They don't own their actual crop. If they sell it to the U.S. government, they own the patents. They own the food. That's why they don't want... Girl. Oh my God. A recent USDA created program captures both the disrespect for American farmers and the Biden administration's effort to dictate agricultural practices. Oh, now I gotta know. The USDA explained that it was concerned with farmers not transitioning to organic farming and therefore announced it will dedicate $300 million to introduce farmers to adopt organic farming. Why is that bad? They are allocating money to teach a new whole fucking generation, or the generation that currently exists, so they can teach their kids to organically farm. That's bad. Damn it, we need safe food. We need good food, but it can't be organic. That's too healthy. We need it modified. You're mad because he want liquid death. Water. Okay. Yeah, evolving is bad. There was no recognition that farmers know how to farm better than DC politicians, or that organic food is expensive and land intensive. The Biden administration has also been pushing so-called climate smart agricultural practices, which received additional support in the partisan Inflation Reduction Act. Yes. Agreed. American agriculture should not need defending. According to the USDA's latest data, farm output nearly tripled at a 175% increase from 1948 to 2019, while the amount of land farmed decreased. A fact, as farm output increased by 175%, all agricultural inputs increased only by 4%. And what was the reason for that? Anybody? Greed! Got it. In 2021, despite high food prices, a major problem and regressive, American consumers spend an average of about 10% of their personal disposable income on food, which is close to historic lows. For decades, this share has been in a decline. American farmers efficiently produce food using fewer resources, making it possible for food to be affordable. The reality is not only something that should be defended, but also touted as a prime example of what makes American agriculture so successful. The connection between efficiency and affordability seems lost in the Biden administration's effort to transform the food system. No, it's not. It's not. It's greed. Greedflation is a thing. Go look at any packaging you've had. If you're like somebody's grandma kept a package from like 10 years ago, go look at the same package now. Different size, different weight, different price, different packaging, different everything. It's about greed. They don't care. They could pretend that they care on paper, but they don't. Recommendations. Proactively defend agriculture. From the outset, the next administration should denounce efforts to place ancillary issues like climate change ahead of food productivity and affordability when it comes to agriculture. No. Remove the U.S. from any association with the UN and other efforts to push sustainable development schemes connected to food production. Defend American agriculture and advance critical, important, efficient food innovative production, especially to advance safe and affordable food. That's an oxymoron if you're not taking the environment into consideration and sustainability and evolving. Stress that ideal policies should be removed obstacles imposed on American farmers and individuals across the food supply chain so they can meet the food needs of Americans. Clarify the critical importance of efficiency and food affordability and why a failure to recognize that the fact especially hurts low-income households who spend a disproportionate share of after-tax income on food compared to higher income tax households. Exactly. What was that? Oh, sorry. My husband was listening to something. I apologize. To accomplish these objectives, a new administration should announce its principles through an executive order. The USDA should remove all references to transforming food system on its website and other departmental disseminated material. It should expressly and regularly communicate the principles informing the objective listed above, as well as promote these principles through legislative efforts. The USDA should also carefully review existing efforts that involve inappropriately imposing its preferred agricultural practice onto farmers. I'm pretty sure that if you gave farmers a chance to evolve and helped them along the way and gave them incentives, we would have cleaner food and more food production. That's how the maths, but not how the government governs. You know what I mean? But you gotta remove all of the references. See, again, keep them dumb, keep them poor. We've seen many times where they've tied even like USAID. If you go back a couple chapters, USAID, they talk about you're not going to get USAID in other countries if you don't remove the following: abortion, climate, LGBTQ, DEI, all that woke shit is what they call it, literally. You're going to be denied aid in certain countries if you don't remove that verbiage. Removing it denies it existed. By removing this information out of it entirely going forward, denies history. That is why shit is systemically racist. Anybody? That is why that happens. You want to erase what is happening so that you can create a narrative with a clean slate that has no information. Unfortunately for all y'all, the internet is forever. I don't give a damn if you're under a dictator rule, democracy, I don't care. The internet is forever and it will be found out. So you trying to remove information just means you're trying to confuse and belittle either future generations or those who aren't aware. Because Trump's thing is just say it. Doesn't matter what you say, just say it or don't say it. Denying this when you're taking wording out of your website to make sure that you still have money. Thank you for joining the team. I appreciate you. It is cruel. And cruelty is the point, right? Thank you for the roses, lead. I appreciate you. Let me see. Where were we? Address the abuses of the CCC discretionary authority. With the exception of federal crop insurance, the Commodity Credit Corporation, CCC, is generally the means by which agriculture-related farm bill programs are funded. The CCC is a funding mechanism of which, in simple terms, has $30 billion a year at its disposal. Section 5 of the Commodity Credit Corporation Charter Act 25, gives the Secretary of Agriculture broad discretion and authority to spend unused CCC money. However, in general, past agriculture secretaries have not used the power to any meaningful extent. This changed dramatically during the Trump administration. Oh, but he's not involved, right? When the discretionary authority was used to fund $28 billion in trade aid to farmers, consisting primarily of market facilitation program. In 2020, this authority was used for $20.5 billion in food purchases and income subsidies in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. So they used money that was at their disposal at a time when it was needed, and that's bad? At the time, critics warned that the use of the CCC, which is in effect created a USDA slush fund. Yeah, the COVID-19 was a slush fund. We had such a great fucking time, didn't we all? Ooh, look at that slush fund. Would lead future administrations to abuse the CCC as by pushing climate change policies. Oh my God. Predictably, this is precisely what the Biden administration has done, using the discretionary authority to create programs out of a whole cloth, arguably without statutory authority, for what it refers to as climate-smart strategical agricultural practices. The merits of the various programs funded through the CCC discretionary authority are not the focus of this discussion. The major problem is that the Secretary of Agriculture is empowered to use a slush fund. Yes, I agree. It should be there so that when things happen, they have discretionary funding. Do you not want safe food? Oh, thank you, Keisha, for the hands. I appreciate you. Look at you guys coming out in full force, wanting to learn. I love it. I love it. Knowledge is power, baby. Knowledge is power. And I want you to make informed decisions. Concerned about this type of abuse. Where were we? Slush fund, slush fund, slush fund. Predictably, okay. At a time, critics warned the CCC would create a slush fund, would lead future administrations to abuse the CCC in the climate change policies. Yes, okay, right there. Predictably, this is precisely what the Biden administration has done, using the discretionary authority to create programs out of a whole cloth, arguably statutory authority, for what it refers to as climate-smart agricultural practices. The merits of the various programs funded through the CCC discretionary authority are not the focus of the discussion. The major problem is the Secretary is empowered to use it. Billions of dollars are being used for a program that Congress never envisioned or intended, but is direly needed. So, if you're just joining us, guys, I'm reading Project 2025. I am currently on page 294. We are talking about the mandate for leadership promise within the Department of Agriculture and the USDA. So if you're following along, that's where we are. And if you missed this, don't worry. I will re-upload this to my YouTube channel later, and it goes directly in order. So if you guys can't listen, I totally get it. I totally understand. It's always available, and that link is in my schmile up there. So let's see what they want to change, shall we? Concern about this type of abuse is not new. In fact, from 2012 to 2017, Congress expressly limited the Agriculture Secretary's discretionary spending authority under the Charter Act, and this was before the recent massive discretionary CCC spending occurred. The use of the discretionary power is a separation of powers problem, with Congress abrogating its spending power. This power is ripe for abuse, as could be expected with any slush fund. Oh yeah? Tax the fucking churches and then talk to me. It's a possible way to get around the Farm Bill processes to achieve policy goals not secured during the legislative process. The next administration should A. Refrain from using Section 5 discretionary authority. The USDA can address the abuse on its own by following the lead of most administrations and not using this discretionary authority. B. Promote legislative fixes to address the abuse. Ideally, Congress would repeal the Secretary's discretionary authority under Section 5 of the Charter Act. There is no reason to maintain such authority. If Congress needs to spend money to assist farmers, it has legislative tools, including the Farm Bill and an annual appropriations process, to do so in a timely fashion. While not an ideal solution, Congress should also amend the Charter Act to require any prior congressional approval through duly enacted legislation before any money is spent. No, at a minimum, Congress should amend the Charter Act to limit the spending directly to help farmers and ranchers address issues due to unforeseen events not already covered by existing programs that continue to genuine emergencies that must be addressed immediately. So when they use the slush fund for COVID-19, was that not immediate because they had discretionary funding? Yeah, it is. Prohibit the CCC from being used to assist parties beyond farmers and ranchers. Clarify that spending is only to address the problems that are temporary in nature and ensure that the funding is targeted to address such problems, i.e. COVID-19 when it did. tighten the discretion within the Section 5 identity ways for improper application of the Charter Act to be challenged in court. So they want to reform farm subsidies. Too often, agriculture policy becomes synonymous with farm subsidy policy. This is unfortunate because it's making it synonymous fails to recognize that agriculture policy covers a wide range of issues, including issues that are outside the proper scope of the USDA, such as environmental regulation. That should be within the scope of the USDA. However, there is no question that the farm subsidies are an important issue within agricultural policy that should be addressed by any incoming administration. There are several principles and even subsidy supporters likely agree upon, including the need to reduce market distortions. Subsidies should not influence planting decisions, discourage proper risk management and innovation, incentivize planting in environmental of sensitive land, or create barriers to entry for new farmers. Farm subsidies can lead these markets to distortion, and therefore it should be controversial to ensure that any subsidy scheme should be designed to avoid such problems. The overall goal should be to eliminate subsidy dependence. I thought you wanted to take care of farmers. Then if they need a subsidy, take care of the farmers to produce the food, right? Despite what might be conventional wisdom, many farmers receive few to no subsidies, with most subsidies going to only a handful of commodities. And again, you want to talk about a slush fund? Maybe that's partially used there for things like this. According to Congressional Research Service, CRS, from 2014 to 2016, 94% of farm program support went to just 6 commodities: corn, cotton, peanuts, rice, soybeans, and wheat. And together they account for only 28% of the farm receipts. Although many farmers do not receive much in the way of subsidies, especially those in areas of livestock and specialty crop, fruit, vegetable, and nuts, there is still a significant number of farmers growing row crops like corn and cotton that do receive significant farm subsidies. If you want them to grow, they need the help to grow, and they need the people to purchase the product, which is the government. The primary subsidy program includes agricultural risk coverage, the ARC program, the price loss coverage, the PLC program, and the federal crop insurance program. Farmers can participate on a crop-by-crop basis in the ARC program or the PLC program. These programs cover about 20 different crops. The ARC program protects farmers from what are referred to as shallow losses, providing payments when their actual revenues fall below 86% of the expected revenues for their crops. The PLC program provides payments for farmers when the commodity falls below a fixed, statutorily established reference price. The federal crop insurance program is a broader in scope than the ARC and the PLC, and in crop year 2019 covered 124 commodities. Farmers pay a portion of a premium to participate in the program. Taxpayers on average pay about 60% of the premium. As explained by CRS, revenue protection was the most frequent purchase policy type in 2019 and accounted for almost 70% of the policies purchased. While there are certainly other subsidy programs besides ARC, PLC, and the federal crop insurance, one program that deserves special mention is the federal sugar program. This program, unlike most other subsidy programs, intentionally tries to restrict supply and thereby drives up prices. The program costs consumers as much as $3.7 billion a year. When it comes to reforming subsidy programs, the next administration will have a primary to look out for legislative solutions. It should champion legislation that would. That's very interesting, the sugar program. Why would they want that ended? So it says the U.S. sugar program uses domestic marketing allotments, tariff rate quotas, TRQs, and high out-of-quota tariffs to restrict the amount of sugar available to the U.S. markets. So why would they want to repeal that? The federal government should not be in the central planning business. The sugar program is a prime example of harmful central planning. Its very purpose is to limit the sugar supply in order to increase prices. The program has a regressive effect since lower income households spend more of their money to meet food needs compared to higher income households. That one's got me stumped a little bit because that could be a couple different reasons. But to repeal the federal sugar program, ideally repeal ARC and PLC programs as well. Okay, so we're just taking it all out. Okay, I wanted to see. I was like, why? Farmers eligible to participate in ARC and PLC are generally already able to purchase federal crop insurance policies that protect against shortfalls in expected revenue, whether caused by lower prices or smaller harvest. The ARC program is especially egregious because farmers are being protected from shallow losses, which is another way of saying minor dips in expected revenue. I thought it was all about take care of the farmers, have all the production. But they got to cover their loss too. They ain't working for free. You ever seen a farmer work? I come from a farm town. Shit, I detasseled corn. I know what that hard work is. Like, if you've got a farmer who's having a shortfall and you expect them to produce, you damn sure better help them if you expect them to produce. That's what this whole thing is about. But you acting like they're trying to get some type of damn handout being a farmer, never ever worked anywhere near crops, have never worked anywhere near livestock, any commodity. You haven't. You haven't, and you show your whole ass when you do that. You know that, right? Wow. It's so unbelievable, it's believable at this point. This is hardly consistent with the concept of providing safety net to help farmers when they fall in hard times. You should help farmers regardless if they're making your crop. Make a conservative effort. Let them have a slush fund. Let them have extra so that there's not one citizen, not one person, not one asylum seeker, not one immigrant, not one person that steps foot on this land should go hungry. And then for you to be like, oh, well, you're taking advantage of the system. No. I have a farmer taking advantage of us. Call me back when your first job was detasseling corn, okay? And not just being a Harvard, Ivy League, whatever. Let me know. Let me know how you know better about crops than someone from a small town like me would. Oh, is that... Sorry. I'm sorry. Sometimes I come out. And that's why I'm the country queen. Hardly consistent. The Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, in one of its options to reduce the federal deficit, has once again identified repealing all Title I farm programs. All. So they want the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, in one of its options to reduce our federal deficit, not by taxing churches, not by Knox giving, the 1% more money. It says identify, repeal all Title I farm programs, including ARC, PLC, and the federal sugar program. Wow. Wow. All of them. Get rid of all of them? To get rid of the deficit? Remind me how much money that Downey brought into the deficit again? Yeah, okay. Stop paying farmers twice for price and revenue losses during the same year. Farmers can receive support from ARC and PLC programs and federal crop insurance programs to cover price declines and revenue shortfalls during the same year. Congress should prohibit the duplication by prohibiting farmers from receiving ARC or PLC payments in the same year they receive crop insurance indemnity. Why don't you want farmers to have more? You're literally bitching in this entire document about production. And then when they get paid twice, and somehow like they're just like hoarding the money. No, they're putting it into their farms. Do you know what a combine cost? More than a Cybertruck. Reduce the premium subsidy rate for crop insurance. On average, taxpayers cover about 60% of the premium cost for policies purchased in the federal crop insurance program. One of the most widely supported and bipartisan policy reforms, the premium subsidy that taxpayers are forced to pay. At a minimum, taxpayers should not pay more than 50% of the premium. After all, taxpayers should not have to pay more than the farmers who benefit from the crop insurance policies. Acting like farmers just out here being like, yeah, I'm not gonna grow crops. I'm just gonna no. If they're not growing, they're being told not to grow, or they can't. Fuck wrong with you? CBO has found that by reducing the premium subsidy to 47% would save $8.1 billion over 10 years and have little impact on crop insurance participation or the number of covered acres. Nope. In the analysis, there would be a reduction of insured acres of just 0.5%, and only 1.5% of acres would have lower coverage levels. This reform is basically all benefit with little to no cost. Lies. This projection. In recently released report identifying options to reduce the federal deficit, CBO found that reducing the premium subsidies 40% would save $20.9 billion over 10 years. Beyond these legislative reforms, the next administration should communicate to Congress the necessity and transparency of a genuine reform process. Bottom of page 297, if you're following along, we're talking about the Department of Agriculture. Project 2025. The White House and the USDA should make it very clear that the Farm Bill process, including reform farm subsidies, must be conducted through open process and time for markup and opportunity for changes to be made outside the Agricultural Committee process. The Farm Bill too often is developed behind closed doors without any chance for real reform. The White House, given the power of the bully pulpit, must demand the genuine reform process and express unwavering support for a USDA that shapes a safety net and considers the interests of the farmers while also remembering the interests of the taxpayers and consumers. Any safety net for farmers should be a true safety net. No, it should be a safety net. There shouldn't be limitation. One that helps farmers when they've experienced serious unforeseen losses, preferably when there has been disaster or unforeseen natural causing event causing damage. I don't know, climate change? If the climate changes, you can't grow the crop. Dumbass. And that exists to help unusual situations. Separate the agricultural provisions in the Farm Bill from the nutrition provisions. I thought you wanted safe food. Separate the agricultural provisions from the Farm Bill. I'm sorry. Thank you for the hearts. I just saw that. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Sorry. Separate the agricultural provisions from the Farm Bill from the nutritional provisions. To have genuine reform and proper consideration of the issues, agricultural programs should be considered in a separate legislative distinct from food stamps and the nutrition part of the Farm Bill, and reauthorize such programs to be fixed on different timelines to ensure separation. No. No. Agricultural nutrition programs, which are distinct from each other, have been combined together for political reasons, something which is readily admitted by proponents of this log rolling. When it comes to American agriculture and welfare programs, they deserve sound policy debate, not political tactics at the expense of thoughtful discourse. No, I don't want them separate at all. Why would you want that separated? Why? Because one is going to be less nutritional than the other, intentionally. Control. Move the work of the food and nutrition service. They're going to start talking about WIC and SNAP, aren't they? Go ahead for just a sec. Yep, here we go. Keep them dumb, keep them poor, keep them hungry. Get rid of everything to make them work until they can no longer. They're trying to create a workforce. Watch. We are on page 298 in the Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, Project 2025. We were talking about the Department of Agriculture. They wanted to separate agricultural provisions from the Farm Bill and nutritional provisions. They wanted to separate that. That's step one. Now they're going to drill down. The USDA implements many means-tested federal support programs, including the largest food assistance program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, also known as food stamps, and the Special Supplemental Nutritional Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC, food programs. The Food and Nutrition Service, FNS, oversees these programs and other food nutrition programs, including the Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion, which handles the USDA's work on the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, dietary guidelines. Food nutrition programs include SNAP, WIC, and the National School Lunch Program, the NSLP, the School Breakfast Program, the SBP, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program, the Nutrition Program for the Elderly, Nutrition Service Incentives, the Summer Food Service Program, the Commodity Supplemental Food Programs, the Temporary Emergency Food Program, the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, and the Special Milk Program. The next administration should move the USDA from a food and nutrition program to the Department of Health and Services. Department of Health and Human Services. There are more than 89 current means tested welfare programs, and total mean tested spent on the estimated to surpass 1.2 trillion between federal and state resources. Because means tested federal programs are soiled and administrated in separate agencies, the effectiveness and the size of the welfare remains largely hidden. There are means-tested food support programs in the USDA, especially FNS, where most means-tested programs are at the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS. All means-tested anti-poverty programs should be overseen by one department, specifically HHS, which handles most welfare programs. No, I don't. No, that's there for a reason. It's a check and balance. Because if one does it entirely, and then you've got one conservative administration, they'll take it all away intentionally. They'll make you work for it, make you work harder for it, work for it when you can't work for it, or just let you go without. No. Reform SNAP. Ostensibly, SNAP sends money through electronic benefit transfer, EBT cards, to help low-income individuals buy food. Correct. They are correct. It is the largest federal nutrition programs. Again, correct. Broken clock, twice a day. Food stamps are designed to be supplemented by other forms of income, whether through paid by employment or nonprofit support. Right. SNAP serves 41.1 million individuals. Say that again. Current U.S. population. 333 million. Okay? 333 million. 41 million of those are on food assistance. Think about that number one more time. 4.1 million individuals are on food assistance. That's a very big portion. That's a lot. I mean, 1 in 8? An increase of 4.3 million people during the Biden years. So 41 million individuals. An increase of 4.3 million. Might there be a reason? In 2020, the food stamp program cost $79.1 billion. That number continued to rise. By 2022, outlays hit $119.5 billion. Pandemic, greedflation. Next, now what are we going to do about it? The next administration, and this is not going to be, we're going to see opposites on this, re-implement work requirements when necessary, when needed, when would benefit from. Shaming people who cannot work for one reason or another is an awful thing. And you want to re-implement. Don't you believe most people would prefer to work and earn a great living and have many things than to just barely coast by, barely get above poverty their entire existence in a generational situation? You really believe that most people, if they didn't have the ability to work or capability to work, that they wouldn't? It's people will abuse the system. Yes, no matter what system you have, there is, and I will never 100% agree on either side of the aisle. It doesn't matter. We can all have different ideals. There are people who will use the system over and over and over. It happens. But there are genuine people who can't. And trying to shame people into that. And what do you define as work capable? It just, the statutory language covering food stamps allows states to waive work requirements that otherwise apply to work capable individuals. That is, adult beneficiaries between the ages of 18 and 50 who are not disabled or do not have children or other dependents in the home. Even a strong economy, work expectations are fairly limited. Individuals who are work capable without dependents are required to work or prepare for work 20 hours per week. The work requirements are then implemented unless the state requests a waiver from the USDA's Food and Nutrition Services. Waivers from statutory work requirements can be approved in two instances: an unemployment rate of more than 10% or lack of sufficient jobs. The Trump administration bolstered the USDA's work expectation in the food stamp program. In February 2019, FNS issued a modest regulatory change that applied to only able-bodied individuals without dependents, beneficiaries aged 18 to 49 and not elderly or disabled, who did not have children or other dependents in the home, ABAWD. The FNS rule changed when the state could receive a waiver from implementing the ABOD work requirement, able-bodied. Okay, but then you had a president in 2020 who had a pandemic and set that shit off the fucking rails, and people who never were sick before now have long COVID and can't work. By the grace of whatever God there is, I am grateful I have never had COVID. My husband has had COVID. My child's had COVID. I don't know people who don't have COVID. I've never had COVID. I've been vaccinated. But there are people who were able-bodied who now are not able-bodied because of long COVID. And if the son of a bitch who was in charge in the first place would have just squashed it nipped it in the bud, been the best country there was, there wouldn't be people who would have long COVID. I can't even imagine. Under the new rule, and again, more than 10% and lack of sufficient jobs. Yeah. They weren't able to, if you did something that involved the public, and we were in a pandemic that we couldn't get the fuck out of, what do you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen? Able-bodied people could not work. So, there goes the unemployment rate. And then you bitch when people try to go back to work, but those jobs are no longer there. They have evolved. They have downsized. They have been automated. There are many jobs that are like that. Of course there are. I mean, layoffs happen. People got fired. People are on... It's never ending. But then there are people who are also generally sick who should not work because of things like long COVID. And they're able-bodied according to whom? Because they only have flare-ups every now and then? It's so narcissistic in thought. Under the new rule, in order to waive the work requirement, the state's unemployment rate had to be above 6% for more than 24 months. The rule also defined area in such a way that states would be unable to combine non-contiguous countries in order to maximize their waivers. Of more than 41 million food stamp beneficiaries, the Trump rule would have applied to 688,000 individuals. That's a lot of people. 688,000 is not small potatoes. The Trump reform was scheduled to go into effect, but a D.C. court federal judge joined the rule. The USDA filed an appeal in late December 2020. Biden administration withdrew from defending the challenge, and the rule was never implemented. Thank God. Beyond the able-bodied work requirement, FNS should implement better work regulations to clarify options for states' implementation of general work requirement. Honey, is it 7:30? This requirement is an option for states can only apply to capable beneficiaries aged 16 to 59. If the beneficiary's work hours are below 30 hours a week, states can implement a general work requirement to oblige beneficiaries to register for work or participate in SNAP employment training or workforce assigned by the SNAP agency. Increased clarity for states would include items like states being required to offer employment and training spots for those that request them, not simply budgeting for every currently enrolled able-bodied adult. It just gets worse. I just know it just gets worse. Reform broad-based categorical eligibility. Federal law permits states to enroll individuals in food stamps if they receive a benefit from another program, such as TANF, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. However, under the administration option, TANF, called broad-based categorically eligibility, BBCE benefit, is defined so broadly it includes simply receiving distributed pamphlets and a 1-800 numbers. This definition with a low threshold is to trigger a benefit to allow individuals to bypass eligibility limits, particularly the asset requirement of how much applicant has in resources such as bank accounts or property. Adopting the BBCE program has even allowed millionaires to enroll in the food stamp program. Then take the millionaires off. I mean, that's not hard to do, right? But when you're talking about receiving distributed pamphlets and 1-800 numbers, it means somebody was in a crisis. Those pamphlets were available because somebody was in a crisis. So they then helped that process along. See, when you're in a crisis, sometimes you miss things. Sometimes you forget things. So there are pamphlets and 1-800 numbers that you can call with people who are ready at the help. So when you enroll people in TANF because they get a benefit because somebody physically talked to them and said, hey, I think you need to talk to these people. These people can help you out because you're in a tight situation. It's a thank God. Thank the earth. Thank everything. Because can you imagine being in a crisis situation and somebody has the forethought to be like, let me help you here. Let me help you make less thoughts, but let's get you enrolled in here. And find the millionaires, kick them off, obviously. But if somebody is getting 1-800 numbers, it means something may have been needed. And it may be temporary or maybe long-term. You don't know. Not your call. And I absolutely love that low threshold even exists. It should. You should want to take care of your citizens who could be who just need one little piece of help from something. Maybe something has gone askew. Maybe they lost a spouse. Maybe they lost a job. Maybe they lost a child. I mean, there are so many things. Maybe something other catastrophic has happened. And they're going to receive temporary assistance for needy families. Why do you care? The Trump administration proposed to close a loophole with a rule to increase program integrity and reduce fraud, waste, and abuse. He's the fucking, I want to reduce his fraud, waste, and abuse of him. How about that? The regulation was not finalized before the end of the Trump administration. Good. Reevaluate the Thrifty Food Plan. In dramatic overreach, the Biden administration unilaterally increased food stamp benefit by at least 23% in October 2021. Through an update to the Thrifty Food Plan, in which the USDA analyzes a basket of food and intended to provide nutritious diet, the USDA increased food stamp outlays between $250 billion and $300 billion over 10 years. Although the 2018 Farm Bill restricted FNS to update the Thrifty Food Plan by 2023 and every 5 years thereafter, every previous Thrifty Food Plan has always been cost neutral, just an inflation update, exactly what CBO estimated the cost of the 2018 Farm Bill. The Biden administration may have skirted regulations and congressional authority to increase the overall cost of the program. In fact, the Senate and House Republicans requested the Government Accountability Office investigate the legal authorities process, and the USDA undertook and arrive at such an unprecedented increase. The cruelty is the point, guys. Eliminate the heat and eat loophole. States can artificially boost a household's food stamp benefit by using a heat and eat loophole. The amount of food stamp a household receives is based on countable food income, minus certain deductions. Households that receive benefits from low-income heat and energy assistance program LIHEAP are eligible for larger utility deduction. In order to make households eligible for the higher deduction and thus greater for food stamp benefits, states have distributed LIHEAP checks in the amounts as small as $1 to food stamp recipients. The 2014 Farm Bill tightened this loophole by requiring that households must receive more than $20 annual in LIHEAP payments to be eligible for the larger utility deduction and subsequently higher for food stamp benefits. Nonetheless, states continue to inflate their standard utility allowance. Under the Trump administration, the USDA proposed a rule, which was not finalized, that would have standardized a utility allowance. Reform WIC? Reform WIC. Turning to WIC, the program distributes more money through EBT cards to help low-income women, infants, and children under 6 purchase nutrition-rich foods and nutrition education, including breastfeeding support. As of August 2022, approximately 6.3 million people participated in WIC each month to purchase food. In 2021, WIC federal outlays were $5 billion. The next administration should reform the state voucher system. State agencies control WIC costs by approving only one brand of infant formula through competitive bidding for infant formulas for rebate contracts. Because 50% of baby formula is purchased through the federal WIC program, it is vital that regulation for these competitive bidding contracts does not unintentionally create monopolies. Reevaluate excessive regulation. As for baby formula regulations, generally, labeling regulations and regulations that unnecessarily delay the manufacture and sale of baby formulas should be reevaluated. During the Biden administration, there have been devastating baby formula shortages. There were baby food shortages because of a pandemic. Who was president when the pandemic started? If you hand somebody a plate of shit, they do have to clean it in order to make it something again. He was handed a shit sandwich. So yeah, I don't give a damn if you triple the cost of food for WIC. Women, infants, and children. You want women to have more babies. You want women to be responsible for more babies. You want women to have more infants. You want them to breastfeed because it's cheaper. You want them to have formula. Not all formulas are created the same. You want to control women, but then you want to take away their food. You want to take away how it's recalculated for food. When you have WIC, there are only certain brands you can get. That is true because they have to be nutritionally sound. And you want to reform it even more? Yeah. Shame mothers. That's a good idea. Shame young mothers. Shame mothers with multiple children. That's going to work out well. Oh, what is this? I think I'm going to stop there. Because the next thing that we're going to talk about, is the return to the original purpose of school meals. And that is going to be on page 302. I'm going to stop there because there's still going to be 20 more pages. There's no way I'm going to be able to get through that. So, I don't read on Wednesdays, guys, but I am going to go back to Thursday. And I'm going to start on page 302 right there. If you're looking at it, it's the second paragraph where it says return to the original purpose of school meals. We're going to start there and pick this up. I'm going to download this. Oh, thank you for the heart, Cheryl. I appreciate you. I'm going to upload this to my YouTube if you've missed any of it, and it will cover the pages that we referred to all the way through this. So, and again, it goes right in order. It'll say what I read, when I read it, and what pages it encompassed. So you don't have to think about it. You can listen to it there. Also, again, I'm still working on summaries. They'll just take a little bit longer because I kind of lose my voice after a while. So I appreciate all of you who joined. I appreciate all of you who stayed. Thank you. I hope you have a great night. And I will see you back here on Thursday to read more of Project 2025. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.